I always believed that marriage was about trust, about choosing each other every single day. That's what I thought my wife, Lorraine, and I had for over 10 years. We built a life together, shared our dreams, our fears, our triumphs, and our failures. Sure, there were ups and downs like in any relationship, but I never once doubted that we were in this together, until the night she shattered that illusion. It started with a simple dinner at home. I had made her favorite pasta with a creamy garlic sauce, the way she always liked it. Lorraine sat across from me, twirling her fork in the plate, barely eating. There was something in her expression, something unsettling. Her usual warmth was gone, replaced by a strange kind of detachment. I tried to ignore the sinking feeling in my gut, the quiet alarm bells ringing in my head. Then, without warning, she set her fork down and looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite place, like she was about to tell me the weather, not tear my world apart. "I want to talk to you about something," she said, her voice calm. I nodded, my appetite vanishing. "What is it?" She hesitated, as if searching for the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about our marriage, and I've realized something. We've been living inside a box, holding on to this outdated idea of what a relationship should be." I frowned, not understanding where she was going with this. "What do you mean?" Lorraine leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped together like she was rehearsing a speech. "I think we need to embrace a more modern approach to love, something more open." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and disorienting. My brain struggled to catch up. "Open? You mean a marriage that isn't confined by traditional boundaries?" She clarified, a soft smile on her lips as if she was presenting a brilliant solution to a non-existent problem. "An open marriage. It's not cheating, not betrayal, just a way for both of us to explore life without limitations while still staying committed to each other." I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. My mouth went dry, my hands clenched into fists under the table. "You're saying you want to be with other people?" She exhaled slowly, like she was relieved to finally say it out loud. "Yes, and I think you should too. We love each other, right? This doesn't change that. It just means we accept that love doesn't have to be limited to just one person." The sheer absurdity of what she was saying made my head spin. Was she serious? This was my wife, the woman who once told me she'd never even look at another man because what we had was enough. And now she was sitting across from me, telling me that our love should have no limitations. I searched her face for something. Guilt, hesitation, second thoughts. But there was nothing, just confidence, like she had already made up her mind. I swallowed hard, my voice barely a whisper. "Have you already done this? Have you been with someone else?" Her silence was answer enough. I felt a strange pressure in my chest, like I couldn't breathe. My mind flooded with 1,000 thoughts at once, none of them making sense. How long had she been lying to me? How many nights had she come home after being with someone else and kissed me like nothing was wrong? I forced myself to stay calm, to keep my emotions in check. "Who is it?" Lorraine's smile faltered. "That's not important. What matters is that I'm being honest with you now, and I want us to move forward in a way that makes us both happy." I let out a hollow laugh, shaking my head. "Happy? You think this is going to make me happy?" She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled away. The touch that once felt like home now felt foreign. "I need you to understand," she said gently. "This isn't about replacing you. You're still my husband, my best friend. But I believe love can be shared without taking anything away from what we have." I stared at her, barely recognizing the woman in front of me. How could she sit there so composed while my entire world was crumbling? Something inside me shifted then. A realization settled in, cold and unforgiving. This wasn't a conversation. It was a declaration. Lorraine had already made her decision. She was just waiting for me to accept it. But she had made one crucial mistake. She thought I would. And that was the moment I knew everything between us was about to change. I sat there staring at Lorraine as if I had never seen her before. The words she had just spoken kept echoing in my head, distorted and unreal, like a broken record skipping on repeat. An open marriage, a term so casual, so polished, as if she had rehearsed it 100 times before saying it to me. And maybe she had. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, my hands trembling under the table. I had to fight the urge to stand up and knock the plate off the table, to make a mess as chaotic as the storm raging inside me. But I didn't. I stayed perfectly still, locked in this surreal moment, watching my wife sip her wine with the calmness of someone who had just suggested a new vacation spot, not the complete redefinition of our marriage. I forced myself to speak, though my voice came out hoarse. "How long?" She looked up, blinking. "What? How long have you been seeing someone else?" I asked, this time firmer. There was a hesitation, a slight flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt, maybe? Or maybe just irritation that I wasn't immediately on board with her enlightened view of marriage. "A few months," she admitted, finally setting her glass down carefully, as if this revelation needed to be presented delicately. But it wasn't serious at first. Just exploring, feeling things out. I clenched my jaw, gripping the edge of the table so tightly my knuckles turned white. "And now it is serious?" She exhaled, as if exhausted by my stubbornness. "It's not about serious or not serious, Caleb. It's about honesty. I didn't tell you because I was afraid of how you'd react, but I realize now that hiding it was wrong. I should have been upfront from the start." The audacity of it nearly made me laugh. Hiding it was wrong, as if that was the only issue here, as if the betrayal itself wasn't the real problem. I stared at her, shaking my head in disbelief. "So, let me get this straight. You've been sneaking around for months, exploring other men, and now you want me to be grateful that you're finally telling me?" She sighed, rubbing her temples. "I knew this would be hard for you to accept. That's why I waited. But I don't regret what I did, Caleb. It's made me realize so much about myself, about us." I let out a hollow laugh, standing up so abruptly that my chair screeched against the floor. "You don't regret it? Jesus, Lorraine, you've realized things? Great. I've realized something too." She arched a brow. "And what's that?" I turned to her, my chest burning with something between rage and devastation. "That I don't even know who the hell I married." For the first time since she started this conversation, her expression wavered. It was subtle, but I saw it. The tiniest flicker of uncertainty, of doubt. Good. Let her feel even an ounce of what I was feeling right now. She folded her arms across her chest, tilting her head slightly. "Caleb, I don't want to lose you over this. I'm offering us something that could make our marriage stronger." I barked out a laugh, shaking my head. "Stronger? Are you hearing yourself? You didn't come to me with this idea before sleeping with someone else. You did it first, and now you want me to accept it after the fact." She stood up then, mirroring my frustration. "Because I knew you'd react exactly like this, like I was some monster instead of a woman figuring out what she needs." I stared at her in stunned silence. "And what do I need, Lorraine? Did that ever cross your mind?" She pursed her lips, as if debating something. Then, after a long pause, she said softly, "Maybe you need this too. Maybe you should try it." I let out a slow breath, feeling like I had been punched in the gut. This was it, the moment of no return. I had spent a decade building a life with this woman, believing in the vows we had spoken, in the future we had promised each other. And here she was, standing in front of me, telling me to throw it all away and join her in this twisted fantasy. Something in me snapped then. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't throw things. I simply looked at her and said, "You don't love me." Her eyes widened. "What? Of course I do." "No, you don't," I interrupted, my voice eerily calm. "Because if you did, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't be standing here trying to convince me that this is what's best for us. You love the idea of me, the convenience of me, but you don't love me." She swallowed, her hands trembling slightly now. "That's not true." I exhaled sharply, stepping back as if physically distancing myself from the wreckage of our marriage. "I need time," I muttered, grabbing my coat. "Caleb." But I didn't wait for her to finish. I walked out the door, slamming it shut behind me. And for the first time in 10 years, I didn't know if I would ever walk back in. I didn't drive anywhere that night. I just sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly that my knuckles turned white. My breathing was shallow, uneven. The street lights cast long shadows across the dashboard, flickering slightly as the wind rattled the trees outside. I could still hear her voice in my head, so calm, so rational, like she had simply suggested we try a new restaurant instead of rewriting the rules of our marriage. An open marriage is not cheating. I've been exploring. I don't regret it. The words circled like vultures, picking apart everything I thought I knew about my life. I had expected a lot of things in life. Setbacks, struggles, the occasional fight over bills or forgotten anniversaries. But never this. Never my wife sitting across from me, looking me in the eye and telling me she had already opened the door to other men, while still expecting me to stand by her side. And the worst part? She hadn't asked. She had decided. I rubbed my temples, feeling the tension pulsing through my skull. I needed air. I needed time. But more than anything, I needed to understand why. I finally forced myself to start the engine, the low hum filling the silence around me. But instead of heading home, I drove. I didn't have a destination, just a need to keep moving. I passed by old familiar places. The diner Lorraine and I used to go to when we were younger, before we had enough money for fancy restaurants. The park where I proposed, kneeling in the grass, thinking I was making the best decision of my life. The house we had saved up for together, where I had carried her across the threshold like some cliché romantic movie. All of it felt distant now, like memories that belonged to someone else. I stopped at a gas station, stepping out into the cold night air. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I leaned against the hood of my car, staring blankly at the pavement. Inside, an older man was ringing up a customer, his face worn and tired, like he had seen too much of life. I wondered if he had ever felt like this, like the foundation beneath his feet had suddenly crumbled, leaving him standing in the ruins of something he thought would last forever. I pulled out my phone, my fingers hovering over the contacts list. I needed to talk to someone, to say this out loud, to make it real. But who? My brother? No, he'd just tell me to leave her. My best friend? He'd probably suggest a dozen petty ways to get revenge. My parents? No, I couldn't put this on them. I closed my eyes, letting out a slow breath. There was no one who would truly understand what this felt like. I was alone in this. After a while, I got back into the car and just sat there, staring at my own reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were bloodshot, my jaw clenched so tightly it ached. I barely recognized myself. And then, as if my body moved on its own, I started driving again. But this time, I knew exactly where I was going. I pulled up to the house quietly, killing the engine before stepping out. The windows were dark, no sign of movement inside. Good. I didn't want a confrontation, not yet. I just wanted to be here, to see it with my own eyes. I walked up to the front door, hesitating for only a second before unlocking it. The house smelled the same, like her perfume, like the candle she always burned in the living room, familiar yet foreign all at once. I moved through the house in silence, my footsteps heavy against the hardwood floors. And then I saw it. Her phone, sitting on the kitchen counter, screen lighting up with a notification. I stepped closer, heart pounding. I shouldn't look. I shouldn't invade her privacy, no matter what she had done. But she had already invaded our marriage. I picked up the phone, my hand shaking as I swiped the screen. And there it was, a message. Tonight was amazing. Can't wait to see you again. Red heart, my stomach twisted violently. It wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just a thought. It was real. It was happening right in front of me. And she had the audacity to sit across from me at dinner and act like this was something we should discuss. I set the phone back down carefully, as if it burned to the touch. My vision blurred with a mix of rage and devastation, my mind racing through every possible reaction. Screaming at her wouldn't change anything. Smashing something wouldn't make this pain go away. But I needed her to know. I needed her to understand that this wasn't some philosophical discussion. This was our marriage, our life, and she had treated it like an experiment. I grabbed a piece of paper from the counter and wrote 2 words, my hand shaking as I pressed the pen down, hard enough to nearly tear through the page. I know. Then I walked out, leaving the note right next to her phone. I didn't need to wait for her reaction. I already knew. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even try. I drove aimlessly through empty streets, past closed shops and glowing streetlights, through neighborhoods that were either silent or filled with laughter spilling from late-night bars. I didn't belong anywhere. Every part of my life felt foreign now, like I had been thrown into someone else's story. I kept playing it over in my head, her words, the calm way she said them, the way she looked at me as if I was the one who needed to catch up. I had walked into our house as a husband and left as a stranger. By the time the sun started to rise, I realized I had nowhere to go. I couldn't go back home, not yet, and I wasn't ready to talk to anyone. I stopped at a diner, the kind that had probably looked the same since the 80s, and ordered coffee I didn't plan on drinking. I just needed somewhere to sit, somewhere that wasn't my car, somewhere I wouldn't feel completely unmoored. I stared at my phone, half expecting Lorraine to call, to text, to say something. But she didn't. Maybe she hadn't even seen the note yet. Maybe she was still sleeping peacefully, oblivious to the fact that the foundation of our marriage had finally collapsed. Or maybe she had seen it and just didn't care. That thought made my chest tighten. Had she wanted this? Had she been waiting for me to find out, to react so she could justify whatever came next? I had no idea anymore. It was almost noon by the time I finally drove back. I wasn't even sure why I went home. Maybe to see if she was still there. Maybe because I wanted to hear her say it out loud, wanted to hear her explain, to see if she would even try. The second I stepped inside, I knew she had seen the note. Lorraine was sitting on the couch, her legs tucked under her, staring at it like it was a foreign object. She didn't look up immediately when I walked in, but I could see the way her fingers were gripping the paper tightly, as if she had been holding on to it for hours. I shut the door behind me, leaning against it. Then, she finally looked up, her expression unreadable. So, I let out a short, bitter laugh. Don't do that. Don't act like we're not past pretending. She inhaled sharply, setting the note down on the coffee table. I didn't want you to find out like that. How exactly did you want me to find out, Lorraine? Over breakfast? A PowerPoint presentation? She winced but didn't look away. I told you because I thought we could have an honest conversation. I didn't expect you to go through my phone. I clenched my jaw. You didn't tell me, Lorraine. You revealed it like it was some new age philosophy, like you were enlightening me. And yeah, I looked at your phone. You know why? Because the way you sat across from me last night, so sure of yourself, made me realize something. You didn't just think about this. You acted on it. She opened her mouth, hesitated, then sighed. I don't want to fight. Neither do I admitted, stepping further into the room. But we're not avoiding this, Lorraine. You already made your choice. I just need to know if you ever planned on telling me the truth. She looked down, picking at the sleeve of her sweater. I thought maybe you'd come around to the idea. That hit harder than I expected. You thought I'd accept this? She finally met my gaze again, her eyes filled with something. Guilt? Hope. I thought if you tried, you'd understand that love doesn't have to be just one way. I stared at her, my stomach twisting. I do understand love, Lorraine. That's why I could never do this to you. She flinched. I didn't do this to you. Stop. My voice was sharp enough to cut through the air. You did. You made a choice for both of us. You didn't ask. You didn't give me a chance. You decided, and then you justified it. Her lower lip trembled slightly, but she held her ground. I didn't want to lose you. You lost me the second you made that decision alone, I said quietly. Silence filled the space between us, heavy and suffocating. Then, finally, she whispered, Do you still love me? My breath caught in my throat. Did I? Could I? I had spent a decade loving her, believing in her. But now, sitting here, looking at the woman I thought I knew, all I felt was the crushing weight of betrayal. I swallowed hard. I don't know. And that, more than anything, made her eyes finally fill with tears. I never expected that 3 words could carry so much weight. I don't know. The moment I said it, the air in the room changed. It was thick, suffocating, pressing in on both of us. as if the walls themselves knew this was a turning point. Lorraine blinked, her lips parting slightly as if she wanted to say something, anything, that would take us back to before. Before she decided that we weren't enough. Before she sat across from me at dinner and unraveled the life I thought we had built together. Before I knew the truth. But there was no going back. She exhaled shakily, pressing her fingers to her temples like she was trying to physically hold herself together. Caleb, I held up a hand, stopping her before she could continue. Don't try to fix this with words. My voice was eerily calm, but inside I was anything but. I felt like I was standing on a ledge, looking down at everything I had once believed in, knowing I couldn't step back. She swallowed hard, nodding slowly. I need you to understand that I didn't plan for it to happen like this. It wasn't some grand betrayal in my mind. I let out a humorless laugh. You call months of sneaking around and lying to my face not a betrayal? Her eyes flickered with something. Guilt, maybe, but not regret. That was the part that gutted me the most. She wasn't sorry for what she had done. She was only sorry that I didn't understand it the way she wanted me to. I took a step back, as if putting physical space between us would somehow make it easier to breathe. Who is he? She hesitated, just for a second. But it was enough. You already know that doesn't matter, she said softly. I clenched my jaw. It matters to me. Lorraine looked away, her fingers curling into fists. It was never about him, Caleb. It was about me, about what I needed. I let her words sink in, let them settle into the cracks of my breaking heart. What you needed. Never mind what I needed. Never mind what I had spent years giving her, building with her, believing in. And then, for the first time since this entire conversation started, I felt something shift inside me. The anger, the pain, the disbelief. They were all still there, but beneath them, something else was beginning to form, something colder. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. Okay, she frowned. Okay, I nodded, my decision settling in my bones like steel. You made your choice, Lorraine. Now I'm making mine. Her expression faltered. What does that mean? It means, I said, my voice steady, that I won't fight for someone who doesn't fight for me. Silence. Heavy, thick silence. For the first time since this started, she was the one who looked afraid. Caleb, wait. But I didn't wait. I turned, walking toward the bedroom, the room that until now had been ours, the bed we had shared, the space where I had once felt safe. I grabbed a suitcase, started throwing clothes into it with a purpose I didn't even fully understand yet. Lorraine appeared in the doorway, her face pale. You're leaving. I didn't stop packing. What did you expect? Her breath hitched. I don't know. I thought maybe we could talk through this, figure something out. I zipped the suitcase closed with a sharp, final sound. We did talk, Lorraine, and I figured something out. I deserve better than this. For the first time, real panic flashed in her eyes. She stepped forward, reaching for my arm. Caleb, please. Pulled away. You don't get to ask me for anything now. She stared at me, her lips trembling. I didn't want to lose you. I met her gaze, letting her see the exhaustion, the pain, the betrayal carved into every part of me. Then you shouldn't have let me go. And with that, I walked out. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what my life looked like after this moment. But one thing was clear. Whatever Lorraine and I had been, whatever we were supposed to be, it was over. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something unexpected, relief. I didn't sleep that night. My thoughts were racing, tangled in a web of confusion, disbelief, and frustration. Maggie's words echoed in my mind. You don't know the whole story. What did she mean? How much more was there to know? I lay on the uncomfortable motel bed, staring at the ceiling, counting the tiny cracks in the paint. It felt surreal to be here, away from the home I had built with Lorraine, away from everything I thought was stable. My mind kept replaying every little moment, every small sign I had ignored. The late nights, the secretive texts, the sudden change in behavior. Had I been blind to it all? By the time morning came, I was exhausted but restless. I left early, arriving at the coffee shop before Maggie. The place was nearly empty, just a barista behind the counter and a couple of elderly men reading newspapers in the corner. I ordered coffee just to have something to hold, something to ground me. Maggie walked in a few minutes later, her eyes scanning the room before landing on me. She looked nervous, as if she had been debating whether to come at all. I gestured for her to sit. Talk. She hesitated before lowering her voice. I should have told you sooner, Caleb. I just didn't know how. And Lorraine made me promise not to. My stomach twisted. Not to tell me what? Maggie exhaled slowly, bracing herself. It wasn't just one person, Caleb. A cold shiver ran down my spine. I leaned back slightly, gripping the cup in my hands to keep myself steady. What are you saying? Maggie looked at me, her eyes full of regret. Lorraine. She's been living a completely separate life. This wasn't just about wanting an open marriage. She made this decision long before she told you, and it's been happening for a while. I clenched my jaw. How long? She swallowed. At least a year. Maybe longer. The words knocked the wind out of me. I had spent a decade building a marriage, believing we were in this together, and for at least a year, she had been making choices that didn't include me. I took a slow breath, trying to process it. How do you know all this? I finally asked. Maggie hesitated, then pulled out her phone. Because I saw it happening. She tapped the screen and showed me a series of messages, conversations that Lorraine had had with someone else, messages that made it clear she had been planning this for a long time. They weren't explicit, but they were enough to show her intentions. I didn't need to read more. I pushed the phone back toward Maggie, shaking my head. Why are you telling me this now? Because I thought she would stop, she admitted, her voice tight. I thought she'd realize what she was doing and fix things before it was too late. But when she told me she was going to convince you to accept it, I knew I couldn't stay quiet. I let out a slow breath, staring at the table. So she never planned on giving me a choice? Maggie shook her head. No. She just wanted you to go along with it, so she wouldn't feel like she was doing anything wrong. I let out a short, humorless laugh. I had been played. She had looked me in the eye and told me that this was about us, about our future, when in reality, she had already made her choice long ago. I pushed my chair back and stood up. Maggie looked up, concerned. Caleb, please don't do anything drastic. I met her gaze, my voice steady. I'm just done. And for the first time in days, I meant it. I left the coffee shop without looking back. The weight in my chest was still there, but something about that conversation had shifted things inside me. I had spent days caught in a storm of emotions. Anger, sadness, betrayal. But now, I just felt done. I didn't rush back to the motel. I didn't make any impulsive decisions. Instead, I drove to a quiet park on the outskirts of town, somewhere I could sit and think without the walls closing in on me. The air was crisp, the trees swaying gently in the wind. I sat on a bench, watching the world move around me. People jogging, parents playing with their kids, an old couple walking hand in hand. Life was still happening even as mine had crumbled. And maybe that was the lesson. For so long, I had tied my identity to my marriage, to us. But Lorraine had made her choice, and now it was my turn to make mine. I pulled out my phone and stared at her contact. My thumb hovered over it for a moment before I pressed delete. Then I went to our messages, our photos, and every reminder of her that was still in my phone. One by one, I erased them, not out of anger, not out of spite, but because I was ready to move on. For the first time since this all began, I wasn't thinking about what Lorraine had done or how unfair it was. I was thinking about me, about what came next. I stood up, stretching my arms as I took one last deep breath. The sky was clear, the air fresh. It was time to start over. And this time I was walking forward without looking back. Walking away from Lorraine wasn't just about leaving a marriage. It was about reclaiming my life. For years, I had shaped my existence around us, around the future I thought we were building together. But now I was standing on the other side of it, realizing that my future was something I had the power to rewrite. I didn't go back to the motel. I didn't even feel the need to check if Lorraine had called or texted. I had given too much of my time and energy to something that had been broken long before I even realized it. Now, I was done looking for closure in a place where there was none. Instead, I drove somewhere familiar. A long time ago, before Lorraine, before marriage, before life had become so predictable, there was a version of me that dreamed bigger, that wanted more, that didn't define happiness by someone else's presence. And I needed to find that version of myself again. So I went to the one place that had always brought me peace. A small lake just outside of town. It was quiet, untouched by the chaos of the city. A place I hadn't visited in years. Lorraine had never liked it. She always said it was too far, too inconvenient. But I had loved it. And sitting there now, watching the water ripple under the fading sunlight, I realized just how much of myself I had set aside for a marriage that had never been as solid as I thought. I let out a deep breath, pulling my phone from my pocket. There were messages from my brother, from a few friends, even from Maggie, but nothing from Lorraine. And for the first time, I was glad. She wasn't my problem anymore. I scrolled past the old contacts, past the names that felt like they belonged to another life, and stopped when I reached an old number I hadn't dialed in years. No hesitation. I pressed call. 3 rings, then a familiar voice answered. Caleb? Wow. I wasn't expecting to hear from you. I smiled for the first time in days. Yeah, I wasn't expecting to call. But I think it's time I stop expecting life to go a certain way and just see where it takes me. A small chuckle. That sounds like the guy I used to know. Where are you now? I glanced at the lake, the setting sun casting golden streaks across the water. Somewhere I should have never left behind. A pause, then, maybe I should meet you there. For the first time in a long time, I felt something I thought I had lost. Hope. And this time, I wasn't going to let it slip away.